It's just there's a delay, so.
Okay, so
Let's get going and start.
good evening, everyone. Both those of you who are here at the Peabody Room at the Diocesan Center and those of you who are watching online or will be watching online once this is posted after the fact. My name is Scott Slater. I serve as canon to the ordinary on the staff here at the Diocese of Maryland. This is not my usual voice. I'm getting over a case of laryngitis, so please bear with me. Thank you all who are here live for being very quiet because we have a very good microphone up here recording this, and so any comments, even from the back row, might be picked up and recorded for all of posterity. I want to begin with a couple of jokes because, as I told Bishop Sutton earlier, why should he be the only person on the diocesan staff to have the reputation of telling bad jokes? So I have 3 of my own. Why was Noah the best businessman in the Bible? He floated his stock while everybody else was being liquidated. They'll be here all night. Why did the priest giggle? Mass hysteria. I know, there's only one more. A mortal says to God, "What is 1,000,000 years like to you?" God says, "Like 1 second." And the mortal says, "What is $1,000,000 like to you?" God says, "Like 1 penny." So the mortal says, "Can I have a penny?" God says, "Just a second." Thank you very much. So just a brief overview of what we're going to do this evening. We're going to have an opening prayer in a moment, go over the schedule briefly, which is found in the virtual journal part A, and also in the handouts that have been available tonight for those of you who are here. We will go over microphone procedures, both good microphone procedures and a few examples of bad microphone procedures. We will allow any nominees for offices who are here to be introduced, including one who will be here virtually by the recording that will appear on the TV screen. We will then discuss resolutions, and any resolution submitters who are here will be able to speak to their resolution. And then at the end of the evening, when we're officially done, we have a short 2 to 3 minute video clip that relates to the last resolution, which you are invited to stay and watch if you wish. It will also be posted online so that those of you watching this virtually will be able to access that after probably tomorrow. Hopefully, Jason? Yes. Sometime tomorrow. So please feel free to be seated to remain seated for our opening prayer. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Almighty and ever-living God, source of all wisdom and understanding, be present with those who take counsel in the Diocese of Maryland for the renewal and mission of your church. Teach us in all things to seek first your honor and glory. Guide us to perceive what is right, and grant us both the courage to pursue it and the grace to accomplish it. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. So let me just ask for those of you who are in the room, show of hands of who has downloaded the virtual journals. Excellent. If you have not had a chance to do that, they are on our website, and you should, as a registered delegate, have already received a link to those directly by email. We also have some printed copies here, and we will have printed copies of both B and C at convention, but not of A. We will have the schedule printed, but the reports and any of the other statistical data we are not providing because we're trying to be a little bit greener, as is the case with the majority of dioceses now regarding convention information. So quickly, if you could, those of you who are in the room, refer to the schedule, which is on the front of one of the handouts. I'm not going to go over the whole schedule, but basically the important moments, which are the beginning and ending points. We begin officially on Friday morning at 10 a.m., as we have the last 2 times, with the opening convention Eucharist. If you are coming overnight, arriving Thursday evening, you can register and receive, you've already registered, but you can receive your name badges and check in, which everyone needs to do by signing our official document at the registration desk, starting at 5 p.m. Thursday. That desk will stay open until probably 7 or 8 that evening, and then reopen at 8 o'clock in the morning. So for those of you who like to get to convention early, to stake out a good seat, either at the back or at the front, depending on your personalities, you can do that. We will be meeting in the same grand ballroom that we've met the last 2 years at Turf Valley, at small round tables as we have. And so it's very similar to what any of you would have experienced if you've been at convention the last 2 years. Quick show of hands for those in the room who are first-time delegates. All right, 2, okay. I have a handout for you all when we're done. That might give you some extra pointers, and I'd be glad to speak to you after we've seen the concluding film at the end. So note that we begin again officially at 10 a.m. Friday morning. That allows for some travel time for those coming from ways away. See a hand at the back.
Do you want to take questions along the way, or do you hold them to the end?
If it's a question pertinent to this agenda item, I'll be glad to take it now.
In the past, there has been an online listing of registered delegates. Will that be available this year? To confirm that we have, in fact, everyone registered that we think should be registered?
Yes. Yes. The question is, will we have a list online of registered delegates ahead of time? It'll be as current as we have the ability to print it, because some people register as they arrive. So it'll be as current as we have it. And for some, people cannot register until they're certified. And some people sometimes certify the day of as well. So we will have that as current as we're able. We conclude the day on Friday at 6 p.m. officially, which will be concluding with workshops as the last event of the day. That's what we did last year for those of you who were there. And then there is one option that evening, which is, again, purely an option. There is no need to register for that, and there is no cost associated. That will be a walk in West Baltimore, beginning approximately 7 p.m. So with carpooling, leaving Turf Valley at 6:30 p.m. to do the 30-minute drive to St. Luke's Carey Street for a 2.5-mile walk, which will take approximately an hour, visiting 3 churches in that neighborhood and just giving everyone a taste of that area of our diocese. Saturday, we begin at 9 a.m. because we do not have to compete with commuter traffic that morning. And we begin with morning prayer, including our guest keynoter, Dean Kinman from the Cathedral in St. Louis, who will be our preacher that morning. So know that that is going to be part of our morning prayer experience on Saturday morning. If all goes well, we plan to adjourn at 2:15 or as close to that time as possible. But we can go all the way up to 4 p.m. by virtue of the time we have reserved at Turf Valley. We hope not to have to need that time, but we need to preserve that time in our calendars and our schedules to allow for the flexibility of our business not being concluded by 2:15. So that in many ways depends on our discussions and debate regarding resolutions. I'm anticipating that our nomination process will only go to 1 ballot because we only have at most 2 people running for 1 slot. So there should not be a need for runoff unless we have a slew of nominations from the floor, in which case it might take subsequent ballots. Any questions or comments on the schedule? All right, seeing none. If you could then turn the page, for those of you who have the packet in front of you, or for those of you watching online, please go to Part B, Appointments and Nominations, which is what we're now going to refer to. The first 2 pages are basically the listing of appointments that have to happen at the beginning of convention. You do that by a fairly simple voice vote, and so there's no anticipation of nominations from the floor or contesting of those positions, but that is always a possibility. So our balloting will really presumably begin with the first category, which is compensation and benefits. And at this time, I would like to invite John Rapolsky, if he is here, and I do not believe he is, to come up and speak. John is running unopposed for the one position as the lay nominee. The next position is for the clergy nominee, and Sarah Lamming, who is next listed, is also running unopposed, and I do not see her here, so we will move on. The next position is for Diocesan Council. We need to elect 2 lay persons at large and 1 clergy person at large. As of this afternoon, we now have 2 lay persons to list. So if you had downloaded your journal before this afternoon, you would only have 1 lay nominee listed, and that's Dr. Angela Seaton. I do not see Angie here. Our second nominee, as of this afternoon, is Mr. Wayman Wright from All Saints in Frederick, and his information has been handed out this evening for those of us who are here. The virtual journal, Part B, will be updated tomorrow at some point so that you can get his information as well. But those 2 people are running unopposed, so presumably, without further nominations from the floor, they will both be elected. Next, we have on page 5 our 2 clergy nominees, and they are running for 1 slot, and they are both here, 1 virtually and 1 live. And so, taken in order, we are going to hear from our virtual nominee first, the Reverend Thomas Hudson from St. Luke's in Brownsville. So give me a second to get the technology queued up. For those of you watching at home, the quality of this will probably not be as good because you're watching a recording of a recording. So if you see lines crossing his face, we can't do much at this juncture to avoid that. Jason, is the mic in the way?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Here we go.
See?
Hello, my name is Tom Hudson, and I'm the vicar of St. Luke's Church in Brownsville, Washington County. I'm also a candidate for the at-large seat on Diocesan Council. I've served on the council for the past year, filling an unexpired term, and I found that service to the diocese is an important ministry which I would like to continue. A little bit about myself. I'm from Garrett County. In fact, I live just 4 miles from the western border of the diocese. I am vicar of a small rural church at the foot of the Appalachian Trail. Because of this, I represent the perspectives of Western Maryland and small churches in my service on the council. In addition, I was ordained under the Mutual Ministry Program of Training for the Priesthood, and I'm a member of the Anglican Dominican Order, a worldwide religious order with members in many Anglican provinces. I offer the perspective of non-traditional vocations, plus a wide range of contacts with other Episcopalians and Anglicans across the U.S. and in many other countries. Having served for a short time on the council, I know how business is conducted and which topics are important, and I serve on the Diocesan Grants Committee and the Claggett Center Board of Directors. I hope and pray that I will have the opportunity to continue to serve on Diocesan Council. Thank you.
Now at this time I'd like to invite up our next nominee, who is here, the Reverend Charles Mercer.
I'm Charles Mercer. I'm rector of the Church of St. Mary the Virgin in Walbrook, and I'm also one of the candidates for Diocesan Council. I feel it to be a privilege and an honor to, if appointed, to serve on that committee. And I feel with my 29 years of ordained ministry, starting in the Roman Catholic Church, and my over 40 years of being an engineer, even at present, because I'm a bivocational priest, I feel the aspects of business, I can certainly understand that which takes place in the diocese. And with all the years I've had as an ordained minister and in the communities I've had a chance to work in, I have not seen everything in life, but I've seen quite a few things. So I feel my compassion and fairness will also be a great tool to serve here in the Diocese of Maryland. So if appointed, I will give it my best. I will be fair, honest, and sincere in taking in the content of everyone who serves in this community. Whether you're lay or clergy, I will give you the best that I have. Thank you for your consideration.
Our next positions are for the disciplinary board, and we have one lay nominee for the one slot and two clergy nominees for the two clergy slots. And they are John Henderson, the Reverend Alistair So, and the Reverend Arian Weeks. I do not see any of them here, but again, they presumably will be elected unanimously by virtue of having no other candidates beyond those slots. The last position is for standing committee, and we do have contested positions in that situation, so I would like to invite our next candidate up, Mr. Jesse Milan, Jr.
Good evening. My name is Jesse Milan, Jr. I'm from Memorial Church in Baltimore. Why would anyone want to be on the standing committee? Well, the credo of my life has been, to whom much is given, much shall be required. And I've spent the last 35 years as an adult member of the Episcopal Church, doing precisely that by saying yes. Yes to those who I have great respect and love for, both people and institutions. And two women who I know have the Holy Spirit in them, Alma Bell and Louise Miller, asked me to run for standing committee. And I thought to myself, how can I say anything but yes to them? Not because they asked, but because the institution that I love, above all others, and have the greatest respect for, the Episcopal Church, has given me yet another opportunity to serve it. During the last 35 years, I've served at national, diocesan, and parochial levels. The opportunity to be a lay voice, to speak truth to power, to help analyze the problems, issues, challenges, and solutions for our diocese is an opportunity that I am eager to say yes to. It excites me and it fills me with great joy. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Mr. Ned Crisamagna from St. Anne's, Annapolis.
Thank you, Reverend Canon Slater. Good evening, beautiful evening. My name is Ned Crisamagna. My wife Sandy and I moved to Annapolis and joined St. Anne's in 1987. And over the past 29 years, I have been very blessed to serve in a variety of ministries in my church, including that of senior warden. I find great joy in serving. I feel it deepens my faith and strengthens my relationship with Jesus Christ. Now, I continue and plan to continue serving at St. Anne's, but I feel a calling to serve more than just my own congregation, my brothers and sisters at St. Anne's. Not only have I read what the duties and responsibilities are of the Standing Committee, but I followed my wife through her 3 years service on the Standing Committee and her 1 year as president, and yet I still want to run. I really fully understand the responsibilities and duties that I would incur should I be elected, and I would do my utmost to help the committee serve the bishop and the people of the diocese. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 3 remaining nominees for the clergy role, and we actually have an unusual situation this year, which does happen occasionally. Typically, a standing committee elects 1 lay person and 1 clergy person per year for a total of 8 people in a 4-year cycle. We do have a person who is currently serving an unexpired term, and so that slot has to be filled at convention. And so we will be electing 2 people this year, one for a full term of 4 years and one to complete that unexpired spot. And so we have 3 people running for those 2 slots. The first is the Reverend Dr. Mark Gatza. I do not see Mark here. Okay, I would like to invite Reverend Sarah Lamming up. I do not see Sarah here either. So we do have Reverend Stuart Lucas. I'd like to invite up from Nativity Cedarcroft.
Good evening. Hello, friends. Hi, Mom. Thank you for this opportunity. I am Stuart Lucas, the rector of the Church of the Nativity in Cedarcroft, which is actually just almost to the northern border of Baltimore City. And we've got some exciting things going on there. The Holy Spirit brought a Lutheran church into our midst to close their building and wanted to move in with a hospitable congregation. And so for 6 months so far, we've been worshiping together with the Lutheran Church of the Holy Comforter that moved in to the Church of the Nativity. And that opportunity for partnership has been exciting, and I think is a great model for some of the other churches of our diocese. Some of the issues of property management that we have to deal with, and certainly the standing committee that deals with those issues. And so I bring that optimistic experience and the joy that we found in that, and the presence of Jesus in our very midst in unexpected places. And I would look forward to bringing that experience, as well as my other 15 years in this great diocese that I've served in other committees, and even with my other 2 colleagues that are running for this position as well. And so I would appreciate your vote if that's the way the Holy Spirit leads you. Thanks.
Thank you. When you arrive at convention, there will be copies available on the tables of the nominees, as well as a sample ballot sheet, which will be in a booklet that each person will get when they arrive and check in, which will allow you to kind of keep track of the different ballots as necessary, so that you can record the number of votes people have received, if that helps you in your subsequent decision making for subsequent ballots, should they be necessary. There will also be an instruction sheet in there, which will be gone over verbally at convention, so that when we begin our first ballot, it will go over in detail, how to use your pencil, how to scribble in the bubble, and the number 2 pencils on the sheets, and all those types of things. So know that that will be available to you. Yes, sir.
Ron Buckman, St. John's, Ellicott City. How will we determine who fills the unfilled position and then the regular?
Good question. So on the position for standing committee, the question is, how will we determine who gets the full slot versus who gets the unexpired slot? I believe, I'm not sure of this, but I'm pretty sure our rules of order dictate that the person with the most votes would get the full slot and the next person would get the next. If it's not clearly in the rules of order, we would then make that decision as part of the balloting process. Okay. Okay, now at this time, I'd like to shift to our discussion on our 8 resolutions. And so that is the virtual journal part C. And for those of you who have a handout, that is the light blue paper handout. I want to note that as we have discovered grammatical errors or other typos, which are inevitable, we have corrected those online. So if you downloaded the virtual journal the moment it came out, it is slightly different than that version. So just be aware of that. There's nothing, in my opinion, and this is a personal opinion just for the sake of clarity, there's no changes of any substance. They are really more grammatical and typographical, with the exception of a couple of phrases in the last resolution, which I believe I can help point out. So the way this works is we're going to go through each of these resolutions one at a time and allow anyone who is here who helped submit this one of these resolutions to speak. And if there are any questions that cannot be answered by a submitter, I will try to answer those if I can do so in a diplomatic or logistical manner without any sort of perceived bias on my part. So that's my disclaimer. So is there anyone here from the Compensation and Benefits Committee who could speak to resolution number 1? Okay. Are there any questions about resolution number 1? What I can tell you is this is a standard resolution that always comes before convention. All right, let us flip forward then to page 7, resolution number 2, titled Adoption of Updated Alcohol Use Guidelines. And I'm looking around the room, and I think I am the only one from this task force who is here. So I would be glad just to mention that this is something the task force has been working on for a little over a year. We brought it to Diocesan, we brought the guidelines that you're seeing in front of you with a few changes to Diocesan Council at its November meeting. They suggested a few changes. We then tweaked it a little bit more and decided we wanted to bring it to convention for a full vote by the entire body rather than asking Diocesan Council to approve it on behalf of convention at rest. And so that is the intent. If there are any difficulties with people wanting to make substantive changes on the floor of convention, we are prepared to move that it go back to council rather than get wordsmithed on the floor of convention, just so you know. Are there any questions regarding this resolution? Yes, Eddie.
I'm wondering why the statement about clergy of consecrating an appropriate amount of wine was deemed necessary.
Are you referencing page 8? Or
Page 9, under Eucharist. Clergy shall consecrate an appropriate amount of wine when celebrating the Eucharist and perform ablutions in a way that does not foster or model misuse for any member of the altar party.
All right, so I'll read that so people online can see. So we're referring to the bottom of page 9, the first bullet under Eucharist, which reads, clergy shall consecrate an appropriate amount of wine when celebrating the Eucharist and perform ablutions in a way that does not foster or model misuse for any member of the altar party. I can speak to what the intent of that is, as I understand it, as part of that committee. We are aware that some clergy consecrate more wine than is often used or necessary to administer to the people that are present. And subsequently, when that happens, some altar party members consume that wine during the ablutions to the point of perhaps becoming either intoxicated or on the way to being intoxicated, which puts those people at risk for their safety driving home or the safety of those that are on the road with them. It may seem like something that we wouldn't think would happen, but it does. So it's an awareness. Any other questions or comments? Right, let's move on then to page 12, resolution number 3, titled Companion Relationship with Diocese of Puerto Rico. Anyone here from that subgroup that's been working on it? Oh, Margarita, you're in that group, aren't you? Yes. Dose. Would you like to speak to it at all? You don't have to.
Say something.
But if you come up here, please. Gracias.
I am Margarita Santana, a member of the Companion Information Relation with the Diocese of Puerto Rico. Last year, in October, we visited the convention there, some of us with the bishop, and in his convention, they passed a resolution for companion with us. We started to talk about what about the relation, what we want to do, and they only passed the resolution to start to be open for companion relation. The Puerto Rico in the last more than 20 years, they don't had companion relation with any dioceses, and they insulated there overseas. There is part of the Province 9. For many years there was dioceses a little separate than the other dioceses, but now they incorporated again with the Episcopal Church. And this is the reason they have a lot of work with youth, women, Cursillo, and everything. This is an opportunity for us to share our facilities, our committees, our work with them, and then with us. And they passed the resolution, and us prepare another resolution to say, okay, this is a time to try to find some ways for in the relation with the diocese, companion relation.
And Margaret, it's my understanding that this resolution is almost word for word the same as the resolution they passed.
Yes.
Other than it referring to a
Yes,
different
it's the
diocese.
same resolution they passed in their convention.
Right, and they are sending representatives to be at our convention this year, so we'll be hosting them likewise. Any comments or questions about resolution number 3? Right, turn the page to page 13. Resolution number 4 reads, recommendation of origin of Alexandria to be included in the calendar of people commemorated in the Episcopal Church. And I think I'm the only one also on this list who is here. This was originated by the Reverend Mark Stanley from St. Paul's in Baltimore. It may seem a little odd to some people who think, well, why are we doing that as a diocese? Well, this is part of how this process starts, for people to be included in Holy Women, Holy Men, or the subsequent now publication, which will be a great title, A Great Cloud of Witnesses, a calendar of commemorations. And so this is the way the process starts. If this passes, it will then go on to a committee of General Convention who will then evaluate whether they wish to include it. So this is simply a beginning process. If we don't pass it, another diocese may be doing the same thing. Any questions or comments about this? All right. Eddie, would you like to come to the microphone and speak to that? I didn't think so.
No, I'll do it in a minute.
Okay. Fair enough. Just don't bring any wood or matches with you, please. Okay, now call your attention to page 14. Resolution number 5, titled Amendment of Diocesan Canons. I do see the chair of that committee here. So Pete, if you have anything you'd like to share, if there are any, you can stay there until we get a rousing show of hands. Are there any questions about or comments about this resolution? I see a hand in the back row.
Hi, Pete. I want to raise this point, and I probably wouldn't if it weren't a change to the canons, but I think the canons have to be particularly accurate. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the Episcopal Church is actually referred to as the Episcopal Church. The article should be capitalized, and it's not throughout.
So let me state that so that everybody can hear that. The question raised was that the official name of the Episcopal Church, other than the Domestic and Foreign Missionary Society, is the Episcopal Church, TEC, with the article being capitalized. So the question is, in the canon, should it be capitalized, rather than currently the way it's stated, it is not capitalized. And Pete, do you want to address that? I suspect you can't address it any better than I can.
That amendment will be accepted.
Thank you.
Right. My understanding is that's a matter that the communications people in our denomination bat around frequently, and there's no clear opinion.
Looking at the canons,
Right?
and that's what it says. So rather than bringing it up as an amendment at convention, is it something that the committee can go ahead and correct before the resolution comes forward? Then it doesn't have to become point of discussion.
I'm looking at my expert who presents our resolutions on the floor, and my understanding, Eddie, is that once these are put on the floor, they cannot be changed. Now,
No.
these have been printed.
It's in print, and I think the real, if the issue is whether or not there's a substantive difference between capitalizing and not capitalizing the article, I'm not sure. I think probably in publishing the change in the canons, we could certainly capitalize all the appropriate V's, but I'm not certain that it has to be done as part of the process of adopting a canon at convention.
Well, but it sounds like we can at least, the committee can make those changes now and update the virtual journal as part C. Okay, so,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the changes proposed for these canons? There's quite a few of them. This might be a good time to mention that we will have an opportunity for people to discuss each resolution on Friday before we actually open the floor for debate. And it's the same thing we did last year. So if you have those kinds of questions or comments, you will be able to submit those on postcards on Friday, and those will be given to the different resolutions people who are there. And so some of those changes might already be made as a friendly amendment, quote unquote, that's a colloquial term, at the beginning of debate for that particular resolution. So that's another opportunity as you discover things. Okay, I need to find this page. Moving on to page 18, Resolution 6, titled Amendment of Cathedral Chapter Bylaws. And you see two of us who sit on the cathedral chapter here but are not actual cathedral members. So what I can tell you I know about this is that this is really a request of the current cathedral chapter to give more flexibility to when they hold their annual meeting. There was a question that the Constitutions and Canons Committee looked at as to whether Maryland state law requires a specific date to be listed in bylaws, and the ruling was not. So at one point it was, but that has been changed. So this is not in violation, as far as we know, of Maryland state law, this change. Some of you might be wondering, why are we bringing a bylaw for a congregation to convention? Because it is the cathedral. By canon, any of their bylaw changes are required to be approved by convention because they are the cathedral congregation. Any questions or comments? Flipping the page, resolution number 7 on page 19, titled Compliance with Diocesan Anti-Racism Training. I see a couple of people from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, so I would like to invite any of you to come up as questions or comments or guides, or would any of you like to speak to this first? Okay, questions or comments? This is going entirely too quickly. That's okay. That's okay. All right. We'll turn to our last resolution, which is on page 20, titled Reparations Investment. And I'd like to I will call upon, because in advance I know she was going to be here to speak, the Reverend Lauren Welch. And Lauren, come up and give us a little info and insight into this, and then we will take comments and questions, followed by the offering of the film for those who wish to stay for that.
This resolution came about from, there were several of us, many of us actually, in the Diocese of Maryland, who have done book studies through the offerings of TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We've done discussions on the case for reparations by Ta-Nehisi Coates. We have done book studies on using witnessing whiteness. And the last one, Dear White Christian, by Jennifer Harvey. And many of us have deepened our understanding of white privilege, of racism, and what we wanted to do then, this time at convention, was to offer a resolution to help us begin to have conversations on how to do reparations in Maryland, in the Diocese of Maryland. This isn't a new thought. The seeds on reparations in Maryland were planted in 2003 with a task force on reparations for slavery. And so it's just it's a continuation of the work that the hard work we've been doing here in the Diocese of Maryland.
Questions or comments?
I do have a question.
Repeat the question, which is.
Lord, the paragraph about no strings attached and UBE will make the determination. Could you say a little more about that? I mean, does that mean that the committee envisions that whatever funds would go to historically black churches, or talking about individuals, or I guess I'm not clear.
What we mean by no, I'm sorry.
So repeat that.
Yes,
So can you tell me which resolve you're speaking to?
I'm talking about the next to the last paragraph.
In the explanation?
The resolution calls upon the diocese to be it. The next to the last paragraph on page 21.
Oh, the explanation.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just looking for it here.
So while she's looking, the question regarded the second to last paragraph in the explanation as to what the intent was to the phrase in the fourth line, that it is important that there be no strings attached to the use of these assets.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I found it. We put that in there so that the money that will be given to UBE is up to UBE to determine how that will be dispersed. That what is given is not given with you will do such and such with it. Is that helpful?
No, not really. Only because, and I'm not speaking against this, generally when funds are involved, there's some idea of how the funds ought to be used. And this is different from that. I'm not speaking against it. If convention wants to pass it, I certainly am not in any way speaking against it. It just works in a way so different from any resolution concerning money that I've seen in the past. That's why I'm raising it, because I would imagine it might be raised at convention.
And those things can be raised during the conversations, and you can give us ideas of how to address that, and we can come back.
Perhaps this could further that, respond to the question. I was part of several of the book studies sessions, and it was my understanding that one of the reasons for that might be that there was a sense that in the past any reparations that would have been offered were offered with too many strings attached and in a paternalistic fashion, and that if I read the resolution correctly, the intent is to deliberately avoid any hint of that kind of attitude.
Correct.
So the comment was that the spirit is that when in past attempts to do reparations, if there are strings attached, then it doesn't meet the spirit of reparations by some people's definitions. And I believe there's a 1969 special convention of the Episcopal Church mentioned it here, in which that became a problem for that passing because the General Convention wanted to have a report back on how that money was spent, and it didn't pass for that reason. So the image I've heard explained, to kind of put this in colloquial terms, is if you've owed somebody a lot of money for 20, 30 years, 50 years, 150 years, the person that you're paying back doesn't need to explain how they're going to spend their money, if it's their money.
I guess part of my question is, how do you know who you owe the money to in this situation? But that's okay.
Right, that's...
That is a
question as well on that.
And then Charles.
Who is the Union of Black Episcopalians?
I know. That is
the local chapter of a national association, as it says, I'm a member of UBE over Carriage one.
It is the local.
Accident, I'm not. But that's what it is. It's a voluntary group of Black Episcopalians who have a chapter here, and there's a national group. And what they have done in the past, and Carrie again can correct me, is to work on issues having to do with Black Episcopalians, and especially at the time when there were many more issues, dare I say that, then there may be now many more obstacles. When one would look around, there would be few, if any, Black clergy at the larger Episcopal churches. Black clergy may have had trouble finding churches that would compensate them in the same way. There are those sorts of things, and being elected to General Convention and all that kind of thing.
Give Lauren a chance to say that just a little bit so that it can get recorded. Thank you.
The Union of Black Episcopalians here in Maryland is the local chapter of the National Union of Black Episcopalians, and that stems from the Episcopal Society for Cultural and Racial Unity, which began in 1959, and then the United Black Laity and Clergy was formed, and now the Union of Black Episcopalians. Sure.
Yeah, in the first resolve, it said equivalent to at least 10% of the assets. About what is 10%?
I have been told that the ballpark number is about $1 million.
And so is there any conversation or reflection about what that does to our operating budget, which goes a great portion of to direct ministry in areas of our city specifically that need help, and are we hurting other ministries by giving to UBE?
So I want to back up a second just to make sure that Lauren's answered, that people heard the question that Lauren's answered. The question was, how do we know how much this 10% is? And Lauren said, the best guess that she has heard from different people who have looked at this already, because there's already been a number of committees who have been looking at this and trying to figure out what exactly would that look like. It's approximately $1 million, which in my estimation as a member of the program budget committee would translate to a loss of, or a net loss of approximately $50,000 a year out of the operating budget, because our typical draw is a 5% draw from our endowment. And so the program and budget committee would be the ones that would have to determine how that would be impacted. And as I read in the explanation, that's addressed in there.
Eddie.
Your final resolve encourages all congregations to examine how their endowed wealth is tied to the institution of slavery and consider returning a portion of that wealth as part of this initiative. Well, we have endowed wealth, not significant, I mean, $60,000 or so, and that was created beginning about, 30 years ago. But one could make the argument that if, for example, we had stock in the Deutsche Bank, that when they bought a bank in Georgia that had accepted slaves as collateral, that somehow our connection to that particular entity involved us in slavery. I just wonder if this isn't opening an unnecessary can of worms.
The question is the last resolve that we, the Diocese of Maryland, encourages all congregations to examine how their endowed wealth is tied to the institution of slavery and consider returning a portion of that wealth as part of this initiative. And Eddie's question is wondering if this is maybe opening a can of worms, because there are churches that have endowed wealth that may or may not be tied to slavery. And the the resolve is encouraging parishes to look at it, so it's not requiring them.
I just have to speak my mind a little bit. I'm new to this, but I don't like the term reparations at all. I get it. There's been a lot of discrimination. There's been a lot of social and economic issues created because of discrimination. But half of this country fought a war to end slavery. And when you talk about reparation, that makes me feel like I did something wrong. And that bothers me. But on the other hand, I am happy to give, promote, volunteer, and be actively involved in helping overcome the social injustices that have resulted from this discrimination. So I just don't like the term. I think it could be phrased a lot better and dealt with in a more positive environment. It's not a matter of funds, but it is a matter of how it is stated.
The statement is not caring for the term reparations as being a negative and difficult term for many people, and it is. And I think that's one of the things that will come up in the conversations around the table. I don't think that. I think it will come up many times.
I actually have two questions. One is we've all been aware of the recent revelations at Georgetown University and its direct ownership of slaves and the potential for reparations through that lineage. But I'm wondering if your research indicated that the Diocese of Maryland specifically was involved in slaveholding, or is this resolution representative of parishes within the diocese that may have been involved in slaveholding? Question one. And question two is, given the number of historic black colleges and the need in charter schools and public schools across this diocese for supporting the health and wealth and education of African American people who are, in fact, have ancestors from slaves, was UBE the only option considered by this committee before bringing this resolution?
So was UBE the only option considered for this resolution? And for the people who put this forth, UBE was the only option that we considered, because we thought of other options and didn't know how to make it work. And we thought UBE would have the knowledge and resources to know where best to fund the work.
So that was question two.
That was question, and the first one, the history of the Diocese of Maryland Church's complicity with slavery has been documented. Our churches have been asked to document their complicity with slavery, and to this date we have 23 who have, and they are online on the Trail of Souls. That is the history that we know.
Just prior to that, Kingsley Smith, along with Mary Klein, did in-depth research. That's part of the short DVD that you're invited to watch and see afterwards. So history was done prior to the congregation being asked to do this.
What Angela just said is the video that you'll be able to watch online or see tonight after this is over with has more of the history that Kingsley Smith and Mary Klein did back in 2006 is when the video was made.
It's short.
And it's very short.
That history, Jason reminded me, is listed on our diocesan website under the Our Diocese tab under History. It's another way to reference it.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
Have our bishops spoken to this resolution, or will they be, do you know?
I can address that.
Would you address it?
So that brings, thank you, Stuart, for that wonderful segue question. So Canonically, the bishop diocesan, as president of convention, can only speak to a resolution at the end of debate, so as to not influence, presumably. So whether he will do that or not is to be yet seen. I'm aware of working closely with the two current bishops, that they both have opinions on this resolution. I will not say that they are overwhelmingly in favor of it as it is written. They have some nuanced questions regarding the phraseology, the intent, all those same things. What they both hope is that this will begin a conversation that doesn't necessarily and hopefully end at convention with a vote up or down. In fact, what we intend to announce before we discuss this resolution on Friday is that the writers, I'll speak on behalf of the writers and have this discussion, do not want this to become so contentious that it becomes a negative conversation that is not fruitful, rather than a positive conversation that can potentially continue and unfold and build ownership as it's nuanced and perhaps changed. So that's the intent of the writers. That would be the intent of the bishops as this is brought forth. That is the intent of the dispatcher of business, who will have to moderate and facilitate that discussion. And so the intent that we will be upfront about, which I will say now on live TV and on recording for all of posterity on YouTube, is that the submitters are prepared to move this to committee, essentially, if there's a sense that it's becoming too contentious in that particular setting. And the committee would probably be, depending on the feedback that's received on Friday, it could be Diocesan Council, could be UBE, it could be the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, could be a task force representing all three, or it could be one of those entities with the request of representation from those entities. So it could be any of those combinations, or whatever else the Spirit leads us to decide between Friday morning at 10 a.m. and when we conclude on Saturday afternoon.
In addition to praying fervently, what can representatives do to encourage this discussion to be positive rather than negative?
What can we do to encourage participants to have fruitful conversations rather than negative? And that is to respect one another, to follow the norms of convention. And as you said, pray fervently.
Carrie had a comment.
Carrie?
I was going to say that maybe one of the things you can do is to read Dear White Christians, or some of that. I believe Paul McCall told us there's a series that's been going on that talks about today's redlining, which is certainly an issue, an economic issue that is on the back of blacks. If I may take a minute to say, UPE was organized in 1969. No, that was the predecessor. And one of the things that happened was at this time, the church was trying to figure out, we need not to have this segregated hour at 11 o'clock. But the thing that was happening was that they were dissolving the black churches, regardless of size or economic, or how well the black church was doing, and inviting the black church to become a part of the white church, and we were losing our black churches. And that was the reparations, and that wasn't working. And many of the things that this group did, they did wonderful things with the marches being part of the civil rights era, but they failed to ask the black leadership what they actually really needed and wanted, and that's how UBE came about. We were basically a social, we work for social justice and others. As a matter of fact, we have a workshop coming up June the 18th that you're invited to come to. You'll get the flyers soon, but just to let you know.
So that was Carrie Brown, a member of the Union of Black Episcopalians, who was speaking, and we're aware that we think this is actually picking up everyone's voice pretty well, so it may be redundant from what I'm saying, but basically, in summary, a little bit of the history of the formation of UBE and an event that's going to be coming up in our diocese soon. So look for that on the website. Any other comments or questions? I know there's a couple of other submitters here to see.
I really, if I could just follow up, I mean this as a process question. I'm new to the communion. I was at my first Diocesan Convention last year, but I got to be honorary youth, so I was running around a lot. But it's my understanding that in past years, discussion on resolutions has taken on a toxic flavor. So in terms of the conversations that we have around the table on Friday, and the way in which people comport themselves at the microphone, Lauren talked about respecting one another. But are there other concrete recommendations that you can give those of us who will be participating in the meeting to try to jealously guard the unity of the body of Christ?
I think some questions for someone who has only been to one convention, but not as a delegate, but will be for his first time. What are some tips or suggestions or guidelines? And Lauren already mentioned the norms that are mentioned in, I think, Journal Part A. I would also refer to the rules of order regarding microphone procedures. You have the advantage of seeing how we discussed and then debated resolutions last year, which, as you might have observed, resulted in non-contentious debate, at least from my observation, and we had a couple of issues that could have become very contentious. And so we're hoping that that new system will provide that ability. But I would also say it's up to the president of the convention, who's the bishop diocesan, as well as the dispatcher of business to some degree, to trust the Spirit to nudge us to stop and pray or to suspend discussion or debate at any given moments. And it's also really the responsibility of every delegate present that if a delegate feels that they need to call for a point of privilege, to say something about the procedure, or to move that we table indefinitely or refer, that's part of all of our responsibility of people who are there as delegates. Kenny?
You said earlier that the movers were willing to ask that this resolution be referred, and one of the possible places where it might be referred is Union of Black Episcopalians. Well, that's not a possibility because they're not a diocesan entity in the same way, for example, that Truth and Reconciliation is. So to say that, to say it's not possible, should it be necessary for it to be referred to UBE.
Thank you. That's a good technicality that it's pointed out that if it's referred, it is to be referred to an official committee or recognized group under the authority or accountability of the diocese. The Union of Black Episcopalians is affiliated, our chapter, with our diocese, but it's not. It's an independent organization in the sense that it doesn't come under the authority of our budgeting process, like a number of our other associations. Tony?
I'm a member of the group that is responsible for this resolution. And speaking for myself at this point, what I would hope for, if someone votes a table or puts a resolution table, that I would feel would be terrible, in that would end the discussion. What I would like to see is across the diocese, some kind of way by which we could look at the issue head on, and I'll just put it the way I see it. The threat of taking $97,000 out of your pocket might encourage some people to want to talk about it a little more. And sometimes money does that to us, that we are moved from our inertia into action. But what I would hope that we will do is not either to say, yes, we'll just give the money, or no, we won't, and leave it and drop it, but rather that we participate in an ongoing conversation so as, in particular for white folk, to be enlightened on the reality that is really hidden for most of us. And as I said at another occasion, I watched the thing on Jackie Robinson, and the least you could do is watch that entire film, and that would be an education in itself. To but that's only a starting point.
So that was a statement from one of the submitters of this resolution, just talking about the educational opportunities and the desire for the conversation to continue and not simply be a stopping point by virtue of voting on it. That reminds me that I call you attention to the first resolved, because there were 2 changes from when this was initially submitted by the deadline that kind of allude to what I believe Tony was saying. Notice that in the first and second line it refers to giving an amount equivalent to at least 10%. It initially just said 10%, so that allows some flexibility so that because a member of the investment committee and the financial advisory board immediately began looking at, well, what qualifies as restricted and unrestricted. And so, and to our unrestricted funds, can they be used for anything else without getting us in trouble legally? So that broadens that a little bit. And then the word initial was added to the last full line, where it says, as an initial act of reparation, which I believe, to speak to Tony's comment, is that this is simply one step, not the final step. That's the intent of the committee, I believe, with that change. Okay, before we see the film and conclude for the evening, I do want to quickly go over microphone procedures. Many of you will be familiar with this. They're all listed in the rules of order in some minutia and some detail. There are a few of you who are new, and again, once the film's over, I'm glad to speak to you in more detail about that. We have a handout which kind of delineates that in writing. But to be a little more playful than we have been in the past, because it's hard to be playful with microphone procedures, I want to read 5 examples of microphone procedures. 2 good ones and 3 bad ones.
Do we get to decide?
And I'll tell you the good ones. Well, you may decide they're bad if I think they're good, but I'm going to ask you to look for the problems in the bad ones. There are 3 problems in each of the 3 bad examples. So I did not have time to go shop for prizes, nor did I want to bias the people watching online by them not being able to get prizes, and you all who came tonight getting them instead. So here's a couple of quick points. Go to the microphone, of which there will be 2. They'll be labeled microphone 1 with the big number 1 on it, and the other microphone will be microphone number 2 with a big 2 on it. Very good. You will have, and when you go, you wait for the president to recognize you, and that president, barring any unforeseen emergencies or disasters, will be the Reverend Eugene Sutton, Bishop Diocesan. There have been a time in the past where the president of the standing committee had to run convention. He's sitting in this room, and he can tell you what that was like. But someone will be the president of convention, and you have to be recognized by the president, who will say, I recognize the speaker at microphone number 1, or at microphone number 2, or at the podium if it happens to be the dispatcher of business up on the dais. And then you'll have a maximum of 5 minutes to speak, and no more than twice in any given debate on any single resolution. And so you are to address the convention by stating your name, not your title, not what you do, not whether you've got a Mr. or a Reverend or a doctor in front of your name, just your baptismal name, not your full name. First name and last name is fine. What congregation you are representing, presuming that you're there as a representative of a congregation, or if you're a retired clergy person, simply saying retired. And then letting us know why you're there. So here's an example. I am John Smith from St. Swithin's in Urbana. That's not the Reverend John Smith or Mr. John Smith or Miss John Smith or Dr. John Smith. Not John Smith Rector, not John Smith Priest Associate, not John Smith Head of the Altar Guild, just John Smith. And St. Swithin's in Urbana as opposed to St. Swithin's in Baltimore or St. Swithin's in Annapolis. You don't know that you're the only St. Swithin's, because we don't have any St. Swithin's, but we have a whole bunch of St. John's, for instance. So we want to make sure we know which St. John's or St. Swithin's we're talking about. And then you're literally, unless you're in a wheelchair, we might have some delegates in wheelchairs, you would say, I rise, because you're standing up at the microphone to say, I rise in support of or in opposition to the particular thing we're voting on or discussing. Or there's some nuances that if you're rising to move or make a motion, you can say that. But state why you're there. Don't just start giving an opinion on something and we're not sure whether you're speaking on an opinion because you're in favor of it or because you're against it, because that's not always clear in how we present what we want to say. So here's two good examples. What I just said, I am John Smith from St. Swithin's in Urbana, and I rise in support of this resolution because. Here's another one. I am John Smith from St. Swithin's in Urbana, and I rise in opposition of this resolution because. Those are two good examples. Any questions about that? All right. Here's the first bad example. Looking for three things. I'm Father Smith, rector of St. Swithin's. I rise against this resolution because. Raise your hand if you want to name one of the problems in that one. Eddie Blue.
Use of title.
Use of title, correct. That is one of the problems.
Didn't say where the parish was.
Wait, you didn't have your hand up, so yes. Now you, for Memorial. Yes, you. It did not say the town, did not state which St. Swithin's and where it is located. That is correct. Okay, Linda, because I'm your next door neighbor, I'm going to give you a mulligan and let you say, you had said this, what, a problem? I've only heard two.
Oh, I would say the same thing.
Same thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
He failed to give his first name.
Yeah.
He gave his first name, but he said, Father so-and-so. So he used his salutation as well as his title in the congregation. That was a trick, I know.
You got it.
Okay, second one, maybe a little easier. I'm Joe. Can we change the resolution to use different words? Raise your hand. What's the first problem? Jesse?
Didn't give his full Christian name.
Correct.
He didn't say where he was from.
He did not say where he is from. That is correct. Where's the last one?
He didn't say whether it was a
Wait, Eddie had his hand up.
He didn't say why he was speaking.
Correct. Thank you. He did not say why he was speaking. He did not state his full name, and he did not tell us where he was from. Last one. Hey, Bish. I think people need to understand that. Oh, come on, somebody besides Eddie. Somebody on this side of the room. Yes. He did not say why he was there. We had no idea what he was going to speak in any direction. That's for sure. Yes.
He was not respectful.
Correct. He did not address the president with the dignity and respect of our baptismal covenant. And technically, he should have said, Mr. President, or President, may I, or, Mr. President, I rise. So if you really want to be precise, use the term president. It's really not Bish. Only I can get away with that, but only on a good day. Yes.
He didn't say where he was from.
And he did not say where, the church or the location. Correct. You all passed with flying colors. I hope you listening at home did the same, as well as the people in here. Well, thank you all. We are ahead of schedule. So I'm going to officially conclude with the prayer and then invite you, if you'd like to remain, to watch the film. And we will try to live broadcast it, but if those of you who are watching at home or any of you who are here would like to see it again, you will be able to go to our website. The easiest way to find it, anything related to convention, there's a search button up on the top right side of the website over here. Type in the word convention, hit the little hourglass, and it'll take you to the convention link, and you can look for either the recording of tonight's session or the subsequent resource as well. Now I just have to find my other sheet with the concluding prayer. I can't, I'm just going to be spontaneous. What the heck? Remaining seated, let us pray. O God, by your grace, you have called us in this diocese to a goodly fellowship of faith. Bless our bishops, Eugene and Chilton, and other clergy, and all our people. Grant that your word may be truly preached and truly heard, your sacraments faithfully administered and faithfully received. By your Spirit, fashion our lives according to the example of your Son, and grant that we may show the power of your love to all among whom we live, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. So again, we are officially concluded. If any of you wish to leave, we invite you to quietly do so while we get the movie queued up. And then any new deputies or delegates who wish to remain, I have a handout to talk with you. Otherwise, we will look forward to seeing everyone no later than when on Friday, May 13th? 10 a.m.